Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So, continuing the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I've got part 2 of the arcade hidden gem course for you today. And it's a very tongue-in-cheek title because we're going to be talking about not one, not two, but 3 arcade cores that have gems in the game. Not really the intent of the video, it just kind of happened to be that way. But there's so many amazing cores on the arcade side of things, so many obvious hits, but there's a lot of deep-cut hidden gems as well, and we're going to be talking about those today. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, the original RoboCop by Data East is an absolute ton of fun, super challenging, side-scrolling beat-em-up run-and-gun game. And this is one that doesn't get nearly as many mentions as I wish it did. So you definitely have to check this out if you've never played it, especially if you love the RoboCop movies, which are some classic 80s action fun. I particularly love this chicken's restaurant billboard right here. It's a cooked chicken torso with its legs still attached like it's walking around fully cooked. This is the classic arcade game that is just so brutally hard. You need to learn the patterns to get better at it, or else you're going to have to credit feed the thing. But a lot of the fun comes in learning the overall mechanics of the game, and you marry that together with some fun graphics and some RoboCop, and you just have a recipe for one classic arcade game that I'm sure not everyone has played, because as many running guns and as many beat-em-ups are on MiSTer FPGA, something like RoboCop is just one of those titles I feel like a lot of people would have missed. But tell me down below, have you played this game recently? Do you remember it back in arcades? I never actually encountered this one in arcades when I was a kid. I got to RoboCop first via MAME emulation years ago, and I have since played it in arcades, but this is one of those MiSTer cores. It's just kind of nested in the Data East folder if you have the arcade organizer on. Maybe you played it, maybe you just decided it wasn't for you, but you should definitely check this one out. It has all the things you need to get an awesome game, and I particularly love the bonus levels as well, where you get the pseudo first person target practice mode just to try to get a high score. This is Data East doing what Data East always did best, which is just classic arcade fun. And hopefully one day we get some more Data East games, because there's stuff out there like the Cliffhanger Edward Randy that I would absolutely love to see on MiSTer FPGA as well. But definitely play RoboCop. Don't let the difficulty get you off your tracks. This is just a lot of fun, and one that I think everyone should absolutely play. But let's go from run and gun to beat 'em up, because on the IREM M92 core, which has recently been updated, Undercover Cops is just an absolutely spectacular beat 'em up that again I feel like flies under the radar. When people talk IREM M92, they talk stuff like Ninja Baseball, Batman on the beat 'em up side of things, but Undercover Cops is every bit as good as that game, just with a more dark tone. This isn't really a horror or dark game for any stretch of the imagination, but it isn't that bright, cheery Ninja Baseball Batman that people definitely have seen pretty much everywhere. I mean, on the dark side of things, you do have crows eating skeletons on the ground, so I guess maybe it does qualify as a quote-unquote darker game. But this is an amazing title whether you play alone or you bring a friend. It's got everything you want out of the beat 'em up genre, and it also is just one of those games that I feel like a lot of people haven't played. And because it was made by IREM and it's on the M92 board, you get some absolutely spectacular 2D graphics, a ton of different enemies to fight, a lot of different weapons to use, and just an overall sense of charm and wonder when you're playing this game. It only takes like 35 minutes to see from start to finish, and it's well worth your time playing, and this is the type of game that just gets better if you bring a friend. But I love all the different things you can pick up in the game. Pieces of steel girder, you have an elevator section which you know is a requirement in any good arcade beat 'em up, a lot of fun special moves, great music. This just has everything going for it except name recognition. I just feel like this is one of those titles where you don't hear many people talk about it. You even get a good character selection screen, so you can kind of pick out the character you want and enjoy the game how you want to play it. But tell me down below again, have you played Undercover Cops? Are you aware it existed? This one's probably not as deep of a cut as something like RoboCop is as far as most people's memories, but it does still kind of go under the radar, and that's such a bummer because this is just one of those classic games. But if there was one game that I could make come over to MiSTer FPGA on the beat 'em up side of things, would be Night Slashers by Data East, another classic arcade beat 'em up that just isn't here yet. But we've done run and gun, we've done beat 'em up. Let's move over to shmups, and a cave one at that. This is Dangon Feveron. Now most people probably know of its existence, and they probably hear it's not as good as the other cave shmups of the era. I would agree, that is true. This is not Cave's best effort, but it's still a ton of fun, and don't skip it if you heard it's not the best thing out there, because it's got an epic soundtrack. 30 seconds and I'll be right back. Fun music, fun sound effects, classic cave difficulty, and this is just one of those things where this game, I don't know if it's the theming or otherwise, just doesn't get as much attention as pretty much every other cave shmup of the era. And if you're into bullet hell shmup games and you haven't played this one yet, this is my indication to you that you definitely need to check it out. It is a ton of fun. This is like an A- to what a normal A cave game would be. The bullet patterns are difficult, you get a lot of fun involved in it, you get to learn the entire game, try to get better, and try to get to that 1cc attempt. And this is just one of those things. If you go into the cave folder, maybe you're not familiar with Dangun Feveron. It's got a completely different personality than pretty much every other cave shmup out there, whether you're talking about Death Smiles being that gothic theming, any of the other sci-fi space shmups going on here. Dangun Feveron is completely different while also feeling extremely similar in all the best ways. So it's one of those titles, give it a shot, play it for 5-10 minutes, maybe you won't fall in love with it, or maybe you will, but the great part is it's another cave shmup on MiSTer FPGA, and if you're aware at all what these boards actually cost if you want to buy an arcade PCB, you'll realize having one more cave game on MiSTer FPGA is friendly for your wallet and going to give you a ton of fun play-wise. Now let's get over to the fighting game genre. This is Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix, the first of 3 games that contain gems in our Arcade Hidden Gem Core series. And this is another title, I'm sure most people are aware of its existence, but when they turn on MiSTer FPGA and look for a fighting game, they go for Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter Alpha 2, Street Fighter 2, any of the SNK Neo Geo games, Darkstalkers, things such as that. But Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix is an absolute ton of fun, which basically kind of condenses down the Capcom fighting formula to a 3-button game, but this has absolutely spectacular sprites and visuals, an amazing soundtrack, and a ton of depth as far as arcade fighting games goes. I know a lot of people look at the super deformed graphics and probably think this is more a game for quote-unquote kids, but there is so much fun to have here in Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix, whether you're playing against the CPU or more specifically if you bring a friend along for the ride. This is the type of thing you don't think there's that much depth and complexity to it, but when you actually start playing the game and getting into it, you realize the moveset is there, the difficulty is there, the challenge is there, everything you want out of a Capcom fighting game is here, and I just feel like the art design and the name of this game confuse a few too many people, and they don't actually give it a chance. But tell me down below if you played this and what are your thoughts on it. The gem collecting mechanic is quite good, all of the artwork in the winner or loser sequences is fun as well. This is just basically Street Fighter meets Darkstalkers Revenge meets every other Capcom fighting game around, except condensed down to a 3-button input style. And I come from an SNK background, so I like the 4 buttons of King of Fighters and the rest of the SNK games, and if you're not super into the Capcom 6-button setup for most of their titles, this may be a good way to ease into it, but I would assume most people are fine with the 6-button setup. But again, this is another one, pun very much intended, is a hidden gem, and that's because hidden gems just start flying all over the screen, but it also is just a ton of fun, great to play, fun to look at, and great to listen to. Now the next game in our hidden gem series that contains gems is Puzzle Upoko. You get to play as a cat who is underwater. This is a puzzle game made by Cave, the same people that made the bullet hell shmups that you know, love, and play on MiSTer FPGA and everywhere else. This is basically Puzzle Bobble meets something like Tetris. It is an absolute metric crap ton of fun. This is the type of game that you sit down and think you're going to play 10 minutes of, and then suddenly 2 hours have gone by. The entire mechanic is you just hold down on your arcade stick and you basically charge up wherever you're going to drop those balls. Sometimes you have to break through glass to be able to get to the match. Match 3 colors, they go away, and you can chain the matches to basically clear the entire screen at once. Now this is just the type of game that you play when maybe you played a few too many shmups or a few too many fighting games and you want to sit back and play some retro gaming fun and relax. And this is one that every single time I talk about it on the channel, most people say they were not in any way, shape, or form aware it ever existed. And you'll see there that we do match one of those colors and basically almost clear out the entire board at once. If you enjoy Puzzle Bobble, if you enjoy Tetris, if you enjoy Puyo Puyo, Puzzle Upoko is going to have so much here for you, and it's probably one of those things you've probably gone by the title 3 or 4 times in your MiSTer FPGA folder, wondered what it was, and just never opened it up. So trust me on this one, it is super charming, super unique, and absolutely a blast. Now on the things that might be obvious to some but not to others, R-Type Leo, another IROM M92 game, is an absolutely amazing shmup. The sad part about this is, as far as the R-Type franchise is concerned, people don't consider this to be quote-unquote as good as the other R-Type games. That is because this game did not start life as an R-Type title, it was converted into that franchise about halfway through development, so it does feel a lot different than your standard R-Type, and I feel like a lot of people ignore it because of that. Just put R-Type out of your head, think of this as any other shmup. This is an absolutely fantastic game. It's got a ton of challenge, absolutely incredible graphics because it is on the IREM M92, a great soundtrack as well, and just overall shmup challenge. This clearly isn't a bullet hell game or a tate game. It's one of those classic R-Type challenging horizontal games where you start off and you feel like you're almost going to beat the game, and then suddenly once you get to level 3 it absolutely hands you your ass. This is one of those games. Just ignore the people that say R-Type Leo isn't as good as every other R-Type game. Play it for what it is, and there's a ton of fun to be had. And like I said just a moment ago, the soundtrack is great. Listen, and I'll be right back with more games. Just such an incredible soundtrack to an absolutely incredible shmup, and this is one, like I said, you have to play this. I love the graphics, I love the challenge, I love the music, I love the weapon system and all of the upgrades. I think this is as good as any other R-Type game ever made. It just doesn't 100% feel like an R-Type game, and that's because it didn't start as one. But ignore the internet, don't listen to people that tell you R-Type Leo isn't as much fun as everything else, because this game is a 10 out of 10, and the performance on Wickerwaka's IREM M92 core holds up so incredibly well, and if you use the overclock you're going to get less slowdown, giving you a new way to play. Now the last game on the recommendation list and our third hidden gem that contains gem is Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. This is basically like a combination of Tetris and Puyo Puyo mixed together, but without that puzzle bobble element that Puzzle Upoko had. This game is just absolutely mind-bendingly fun, especially if you bring a second player along. Maybe you have a friend over that's not into fighting games, not into shmups, but you want to play some games together. This has absolutely everything you need. It's so easy to learn and understand, but the depth comes in when you actually play against another player that's talented, or the CPU when you turn the difficulty up. It is so simple to learn. Put the gems together in color, and when you get one of the glowing orbs here, just make sure that you touch the colors together and they will phase out of existence. The bigger the chain, the more you're going to send over to your opponent's side. You'll see there all of those different blocks fell down, blocking his path and a lot of the setup he had. If you play this as a two-player game, volleying back and forth, trying to succeed and to screw your friend over, you're going to be screaming and yelling and having so much fun while you do it. This is the type of game that just becomes absolute chaos when you play, so put it on your next game night calendar. Definitely check this one out, because I feel like most people want to play Puyo Puyo, want to play Tetris, things such as that, but I don't really hear this game mentioned all that often at all, and that really bums me out. The last time I had friends over for a game night, my wife and I played this heads to head, waiting for another person to start, and we were absolutely just yelling at each other the entire time in a happy way. That's how intense this game is. But that's Hidden Gems Volume 2, 3 games that involve gems. That just happened to be a lucky surprise, so I went with it. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite hidden gem on MiSTer FPGA is. I would be curious. But we're done. Go play these games, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.